Greetings, everyone. Our respect to our course professor, Dr. Kelly Whitney-Gould, and to our fellow students, a pleasant day to one and all. We are Group D, and we are here to present to you our theory to practice on the environmental issues due to mass tourism in Iceland and how they relate to Kohlberg's theoretical framework. Members of our team are Alfredo, Karen, and yours truly, Dale. Before we start with our presentation, allow us first to acknowledge that the Royal Roads University campus is located on the traditional lands of Esquimals and Songhees ancestors and families. With gratitude, we live, work, and learn here where the past, present, and future of Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, faculty, and staff come together. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connections to this place. We also recognize the contributions of other Indigenous peoples have made, both in shaping and in strengthening this community in particular, our province and country as a whole. And to officially start our presentation, let me ask you first, has any one of you here had been to Iceland? If yes, what's your most unforgettable Iceland experience? And if you've never been to Iceland, what is your dream Iceland escapade? Please don't hesitate to share with us your experience or desired Icelandic experience as you comment in our presentation. Also, we want you to focus on our presentation because at the end of this, we will see who among you guys can answer our crossword challenge. And so, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Iceland. With the tourism slogan, Iceland Better Than Space, Iceland is an island country located in the North Atlantic Ocean. Lying on the constantly active geologic border between North America and Europe, it is a land of vivid contrasts of climate, geography, and culture. The country is typically divided into 7 different geographical regions, and each region differs slightly regarding culture and landscapes, but all are uniquely Icelandic. As of November 15, 2023, Iceland has a total population of 376,205 people, based on Worldometer elaboration of the latest United Nations data. In terms of tourism in Iceland has experienced a huge increase over the last decade. The number of visitors to Iceland began to rise in 2009, which resulted in the decline in the Icelandic currency, making the country much cheaper for foreigners than before. The tourism sector is expanded, creating a lot of jobs and not only tourists, but also people who have decided to live and work in the country. The number of tourists significantly increased from 488,600 in 2010 to 2,013,190 in 2019. This declined in 2020 due to the pandemic and the crash of one of the 2 Icelandic airlines. And according to Guide to Iceland, the world's largest travel guide for Iceland, these are the top 5 most visited places in Iceland. In terms of the nationality of tourists, in the summer of 2019, out of 678,080 tourists visited Iceland, 30% were American tourists. Germany, France, China, Great Britain, Canada, Poland, Spain, Italy, and Denmark are also among the top 10 nationalities. In terms of the protected areas in Iceland currently account for 21.6% of the total land area, or more than 1/5 of the country's territory. According to the Nature and Landscape Protection Act in Iceland, Act number 44 of 1999, the following types of land include volcanic craters and lava fields, freshwater lakes of 1,000 square meter or more, swamps and marshes of 3 hectares or more, waterfalls, hot springs and other sources of heat such as geothermal springs and deposits of 100 square meter or more, and the salt marshes and marshes. The objectives of this presentation include the following: present current tourism issues in Iceland due to mass tourism. Also, this study aims to apply Kohlberg's theoretical framework to these environmental issues. And lastly, to present suggestions on preferred outcomes. And now, to present to us the key concepts of our presentation and the environmental issues due to mass tourism in Iceland, we have Karen to do the honors. Karen, take it away.
Thank you, Dale. Greetings, everyone. My name is Karen Mitchell. A couple of key concepts we would like you to be aware of that pertain to the presentation. Since this is an examination of ethics in tourism class, we will first start with ethics. Ethics is defined by Railborn and Payne as a system of value principles or practices and a definition of right and wrong. Railborn and Payne also note that ethics differs from the law, in that laws are designed to reflect a society's attitudes and desires about the culture in which it wishes to exist. Next is ethics of care, which is defined as emphasizing the importance of special relationships that may emerge among individuals through an examination of the level of care demonstrated between the interactants. Fennell also continues to state that care ethics suggests that although we have different biological leanings, we have the capacity to choose how to act. It provides an alternative perspective on how to reason through problems or situations. Next is ethical decision-making, which is defined by Guy as the process of identifying a problem, generating alternatives, and choosing among them so that the alternatives selected maximize the most important ethical values while also achieving the intended goal. Guy goes on to state that not all values can be maximized simultaneously. Some of them must be compromised for others to then be maximized. Next is moral reasoning. As per Fennell, moral reasoning is defined as a conscious mental activity that consists of transforming given information about people in order to reach a moral judgment. Fennell also states that moral reasoning is intentional, effortful, and controllable. Last but not the least is stewardship. Stewardship is the conducting, managing, or supervising of something. Next, we will talk about the environmental effects of mass tourism. There are numerous environmental issues faced by Iceland due to mass tourism. The three issues we will focus and analyze are the damage caused to the glaciers, the damage caused due to cruise ships, and the degradation of Iceland's protected areas. To start off, in order to give you a good understanding, Alfredo will present Kohlberg's theoretical framework, which was used to analyze the environmental issues in Iceland, followed by analyzing issue number 1, glacier tourism. I will now pass it over to Alfredo.
Thank you, Karen. Now I'm going to talk about Kohlberg's theoretical framework. Lawrence Kohlberg's model of moral development is a hierarchical framework that describes the progression of individuals' moral reasoning. The model consists of 3 levels of moral reasoning, each with 2 stages. The first one is the preconventional level, where egocentric moral thinking is present at this stage. Here we have stage 1 and stage 2, where stage 1 is punishment and obedience orientation that concentrates on avoiding punishment, while stage 2, that is instrumental relativist orientation, frequently ignores social norms and fairness ideals in favor of seeking pleasure from outside sources. The next level is conventional, where the need for validation from important people is what defines this level. We have stage 3 and 4, where stage 3, that is good boy, nice girl orientation, entails acting in accordance with what peers and family judge proper, while stage 4, that is law and order orientation, is influenced by societal norms like laws and organizational regulations. Post-conventional level, this is the highest level where moral judgment develops into an inherently self-governing and internally motivated process. Here we found stage 5 and 6. Stage 5, that is social contract legalistic orientation, is founded on community-based ideas of justice, while stage 6, that is universal ethical principle orientation, represents a universal viewpoint in which what is right is just for all people and the environment. Now, after explaining the theoretical framework that we are going to use, I'm going to talk about the issue number 1 that is related to the impact of tourism on Iceland Glacier. Here we found 3 main problems. The first one is terrain alteration due to use of off-road vehicles. Winter excursions, mainly with the aid of snowmobiles and off-road vehicles, are the primary agents of terrain modification, influence the ice cap's age as well as the glacier surface directly. These vehicles harm the glacier physically by breaking its ice structure, resulting in fractures and crevasses. Their weight and motion also leave behind traces that detract from the glacier's natural beauty. As a result, the glacier surface is disturbed, endangering not just the glacier itself, but also the nearby ecosystem and fauna that depends on this special place. The second problem is about the pollution from vehicles on snowmobiles. The growth of tourism may result in the degradation of the environment from garbage disposal, oil spills, and littering, which will contaminate the surrounding glacier areas and degrade the water quality of neighboring bodies of water. According to research like Raymond et al. In 2009 and Hamas et al. 2011, there is worry about possible chemical contamination of the glacier itself from emission from snowmobiles and other vehicles. In addition to having a direct negative impact on the environment, these emissions, which vary in magnitude depending on the engine type, also leave behind a significant amount of unburned gasoline, further polluting the glacier's surface. The third problem is about the disappearance of glaciers. Although some perceive the melting glaciers as a chance for last-minute travel, this contradictory occurrence can hasten the process of glacier loss. The influx of tourists, their activities, and their infrastructure needed to support tourism can unintentionally exacerbate the environmental stress on these fragile environments, according to a study by Wan et al. In 2019. This suggests that the collective heat generated by large-scale tourism activities at glacier sites might contribute to further melting and shrinkage of these glaciers. That means even going there to see the glacier melt could unintentionally hasten their decline. In these slides, Colbert's theory has been applied from 3 perspectives. The first one is local and tourism operators in Iceland. Here we consider that there is a pre-conventional level with stage 1 and 2 because they avoid punishment or to seek pleasure from external sources, because they focus on the immediate benefits and enjoyment such tourism revenue without taking the environment's long-term effects into account. Also, we consider that there is a post-conventional level with the stage 6 that is moved beyond to locus of the community to a universal perspective. Through education exposure to impacts and ethical discussion, there can be a shift towards considering broader impacts on the ecosystem and a sense of responsibility for preserving natural beauty for future generations. The second perspective is the DMO in Iceland and governing authorities in Iceland. Here we consider a conventional level with the stage 4, that is law and order orientation, because they focus on decision-making based on societal norms and the collective good beyond immediate economic benefits. The third one is the NGO and public media. Here we consider a post-conventional level with the stage 6 because they move beyond the locus of the community to a universal perspective. Their focus is on avoiding for environmental preservation, justice for the ecosystem, and emphasize the global impact of local actions on the environment. Now, I will give some suggestions in three perspectives to deal with this issue. The first perspective is locals and tourism operators in Iceland. Here we have two suggestions, that is the establishment of multidimensional protective measures where tourism managers in glacier areas must follow strict protection and rational exploitation principles. Protective measures include conserving biodiversity, afforestation, controlling forest area, creating man-made lakes for climate balance, promoting artificial snowfall, adopting green transportation, enforcing environmental assessment, and optimizing tourism routes to minimize ecological impact and ensure sustainability. The second suggestion is implementation of glacier wrapping project. Mountain glacier retreat negative impacts tourism, plotting effort to prevent further melting using materials like fleece and plastic. A ski resort in Switzerland, Austria, and Canada cover portion of glacier, allowing them to extend skiing seasons. The second perspective is the DMO in Iceland and governing authority in Iceland. Here we also have two suggestions. The first one is legislation of environment protection and plan. The bill established basic standards to preserve glacier as a strategic reserve of water supplies and prohibited activities that will prevent the glaciers from acting as water supplies. The second suggestion is establishment of World Heritage and National Park. Many countries have created these sites due to the breathtaking scenery, scientific importance, and unique glacial relics associated with mountain glaciers. Regulation within this park prioritize the full protection of animal and plant resources, strictly prohibit full wood collection, and deem climbing peaks over 6,000 meters illegal without permission. The third perspectives are non-governmental organizations and public media. Participation in NGO and public media are vital forces outside government collaborating in climate change policy. In 2001, Mountain and Glacier Protection Organization was founded by Aisha Khan, focusing on preserving Pakistan northern wilderness, particularly the Baltoro Glacier. The NGPO initiated the Baltoro Environmental Protective Program. In 2006, the U.S. research aided by large NGO engaged in Keep Winter Cool, encouraging eco-friendly skiing practices. Greenpeace in 2007 alleged glacier Photoshop aimed to spotlight global warming. NGOs and media not only raise awareness of climate change, but also mobilize public engagement in resources savings and emission reduction. Now, Karen is going to talk about the issue number 2.
Thank you, Alfredo. The rapid growth of the cruise industry is contributing to over-tourism, and it has a significant impact on Iceland. It is important to consider the economic benefits, but also take into account the environmental and social consequences of cruise tourism. Some of the issues related to cruises include the environment as well as the residents. Fredrickson, Wise, and Scott mention a number of issues, including pollution from cruise ships, primarily from fuel oil and diesel particle emissions carrying sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, posing health hazards. Particles emitted can also cause respiratory and coronary illnesses, impacting the quality of life for community residents in port destinations. Cruise ships' excessive fuel use during docking and idling in ports contributes to air pollution. CO2 emissions and the potential acceleration of glacier melting are highlighted as byproducts of cruise activity, as illustrated earlier. The cruise industry is fitting ships with scrubbers to reduce sulfur emissions, but open-loop scrubbers are controversial due to potential harm to marine life. Cruise ship waste, including sewage, poses an environmental risk. with regulations governing disposal within Iceland's territorial waters. However, a lack of waste management regulations at sea is a significant challenge for a country promoting itself as a clean destination. Last but not the least, aviation and nautical travel is exempt from the Paris Agreement, so it is in the hands of each country to offset their own carbon emissions caused by planes and cruises. Kohlberg's theory has been applied from 4 perspectives. Locals and tourism operators is the first. They are at the conventional level stage 4 law and order orientation. Locals and tourism operators understand the importance of tourism through cruise ships, especially in smaller islands which can only be accessed via boat, but would like the cruise industry to be cleaner and actually benefit the locals so that they are involved in the tourism process to ensure that they protect tourism resources, which is what brings people to the area. They demonstrate an ethic of care as local residents want a better environment for themselves as well as the place that they live in. Second is the DMO and the governing authorities in Iceland. They are at conventional level stage 3 good boy, nice girl orientation, but they need to consider all costs and benefits economically, environmentally, and socially for setting legislation which is sustainable and responsible for the residents. They also have to take into consideration how their actions will affect future generations and remote communities, and take their concerns into consideration to ensure that locals and tourism operators approve of their decisions. Their ethical decision-making is put to the test, as they have to balance what is expected of them by residents as well as appease the cruise industry to continue to receive tourists. Thirdly is the cruise industry, which is comprised of cruise operators and port authorities. They are in the conventional stage 2 instrumental relativist orientation because they're interested mostly in profit. The cruise operators are aware of the issues they cause the marine life through discharging sewage and using fuel that is not the best for the environment. The port authorities, on the other hand, get money when cruise ships are in port and are able to run themselves with the money they receive, and hence do not pay much attention to the issues they cause the environment. The ethics of the cruise industry has to come into question, as they will not regulate themselves on their own, knowing the issues they create, since they are concerned with profit and will only regulate until they absolutely have to. Last but not the least is the International Maritime Organization. They are in conventional level stage 4 law and order orientation, since they set the standards for compliance and their mission is to protect the environment. In the article by Fredrickson, Wise, and Scott, Iceland's burgeoning cruise industry and economic opportunity are a local threat. Some of the suggestions to improve the environment are as follows. Locals and tourism operators need to work with the DMO and governing authorities to make all Icelandic ports home ports and not ports of call, which they currently are, to help people in the destination stay longer and spend more. The DMO in Iceland and governing authorities, such as the Iceland Ministry of the Environment, can offer visitors to purchase trees upon arrival, which they can then plant. Impose a tourist tax for cruise ship passengers to allow for more revenue to help with the infrastructure and the wear and tear that the destination suffers due to increased tourism. Ban fuel oil and place less tax on electricity for cruise ships and install high voltage electric connections. Put in strict regulations on the cruise industry to reduce emissions. The cruise industry, which consists of cruise operators and port authorities, could install alternative marine power at each of the ports to reduce sulfur, nitrous, and carbon dioxide. They themselves can plant new trees on a yearly basis to offset carbon emissions. They can switch to less polluting diesel fuel or natural gas and ensure that the local community is a part of the decision-making process in terms of how many cruise ships come to the destination. Last but not the least, the International Maritime Organization can fine companies that pollute over a set limit and manage regulations while cruise ships are at sea to ensure compliance in terms of waste matter and grey water discharge, which will help with the marine life.
Thank you so much, Karen. For our third environmental issue, we have the degradation of Iceland's protected areas. According to the Environment Agency of Iceland, travel around the island is unrestricted for anyone who respects natural resources and protects the landscape. Sadly, travel and mass tourism created a vast negative impacts on Iceland's protected areas. Guide to Iceland, the world's largest travel guide for Iceland, lists a number of situations in which the protected areas are endangered or destroyed by tourists. These include illegal camping. Camping in car parks or in the wild of these protected areas is illegal. Tourists leave not only a lot of garbage but also human wastes. These were shown by signs prohibiting illegal activity on the island. It is also a violation of prescribed routes and creating their own paths of roads or for motor vehicles, as this creates soil erosion. Not respecting the boundaries of, or for example, geysers, rivers, and waterfalls not only destroys the flora but also endangers their own lives. Second, moss is clogged and deliberately destroyed. Danger also occurs when traveling to the country where access is only allowed with an experienced guide. Very often, the moss is clogged and deliberately destroyed, which takes hundreds of years to grow again. Another, we have the throwing of coins into hot springs, waterfalls, and geysers. Throwing of coins into hot springs, waterfalls, and geysers is also prohibited in Iceland, but many people just ignore them. The only place of all protected areas where permitted is the national park, the Pinangagya Rift. Fourth, the building of pyramids from stones. It is forbidden also in Iceland to build pyramids from the stones. It degrades the soil, which will lead to soil erosion. And fortunately, some tourists ignore this as well. Another issue or threat to these protected areas is taking lava home. It is also forbidden in Iceland to take lava home, moving it or depleting it by vandalism as it destroys its natural structure and beauty. Then again, people tend to ignore this. And lastly is vandalism. Vandalism of tourists also succumb to other national monuments. At the upper left, you can see vandals have carved names and other inscriptions into the top of Helgafell Mountain. Many artists also devalue the landscape for better photography. At the bottom right, for example, artist Marco Evariste, a native of Chile, damaged the country in 2015 by throwing a red color into the Strokor geyser to have a more interesting photo of this explosion. This led to his arrest and he had to pay fine. In terms of the application of Kohlberg's theory to these issues, the following stakeholders in the tourism industry of Iceland were identified with their corresponding stages in Kohlberg's model of moral development. Number 1, the Icelandic Tourist Board. As the main in charge of tourism in Iceland, this body operates based on the governing laws on tourism. Therefore, our team can say that this branch of the government fall on the conventional level, stage 4, law and order orientation. The office also acts as the backbone of the industry as they are in charge in crafting, revising, and implementing tourism policies and regulations. Number 2, the Icelandic Ministry of the Environment, Energy, and Climate. This branch of the government is mainly concerned in the protection of Iceland's natural resources, whether in the field of tourism, agriculture, energy, and the likes. We can say that this stakeholder falls on the conventional level stage 4 law and order orientation, as they also craft, revise, implement environmental policies and regulations. Number 3, non-government organizations in Iceland, including private tour operators. The non-government organizations in Iceland, such as private tour operators and other concerns, also fall on the conventional level stage 4 law and order orientation. As tourism operators, it is their mandate to strictly follow to comply to all tourism and environmental laws in order to protect and preserve Iceland's natural beauty and resources. And number 4, the tourism employees in Iceland. This stakeholder falls on the pre-conventional level stage 1, punishment and obedience orientation, as they are obliged by the higher authorities to strictly comply and follow the tourism and environment related regulations and policies in order to avoid sanctions and the likes. We also consider the stakeholder to be in conventional level stage 3 good boy or nice girl orientation, as they are expected to be by the society to act accordingly in order to help preserve and protect the tourism industry and the environment. Our team also considered this stakeholder in the conventional level stage 4 law and order orientation. As employees in the industry, they also have the right or power to help keep and take actions in implementing certain laws and policies related to tourism and the environment. We also have the Icelandic local community. This stakeholder falls on the pre-conventional level stage 1 punishment and obedience orientation. Considering that they are residents of Iceland, they are not exempted from any laws and regulations protecting tourist destinations and preserving the environment. It is therefore mandated that they also have to strictly follow these rules, or else punishments or sanctions will be imposed to them. Conventional level stage 4 law and order orientation is also considered for this stakeholder because as citizens of Iceland, they can also help protect these protected areas by reporting to authorities or any violators of the law. They can also help by calling the attention of tourists whom they see planning to violate any of these rules. Next, tourists. Considering that Iceland government and tour operators have informed tourists about these protected areas and its necessary sanctions upon their arrival or the start of their tours, it is therefore expected of them to comply all these rules, thus putting them on the pre-conventional level stage 1 punishment and obedience orientation. On the other hand, some tourists fall on the pre-conventional level, stage 2, instrumental relativist orientation. They tend to violate certain rules of Iceland, which led to the degradation of these protected areas, for they believe that it is their right to enjoy and have the experience of a lifetime, especially for the paid tours. They believe that by doing this, they get their money's worth without considering the negative impacts. And lastly, the Icelandic academic community, particularly on the tourism. This stakeholder falls on the conventional level stage 4 law and order orientation. The academic community has the power to influence the minds of their students by empowering to be responsible citizens of Iceland. They can also ask their students to help promote responsible tourism in Iceland by sharing informative materials such as videos and images in their social media accounts to make the world aware of what responsible tourism means in Iceland. With regards to the issues on the degradation of the protected areas in Iceland, our team suggests that number 1, Icelandic Tourist Board should craft and pass resolutions on mandatory and strict implementation of tourism laws and policies. And they should create informative videos about the policies and regulations on protected areas of Iceland, including penalties and sanctions to violators. Number 2, for the Icelandic Ministry of the Environment, Energy and Climate. This ministry should craft and pass resolutions on mandatory and strict implementation of environmental laws and policies, including necessary sanctions to tourists who will be found violating these environmental laws. Number 3 is the non-government organizations in Iceland, including private tourism operators and other concerns. Our team suggests that this organization should mandatorily and strictly comply to all tourism and environmental laws of Iceland. It is also suggested that they should help in the information drive to tourists upon arrival, such as giving leaflets. Number 4, the tourism employees. Our team suggests that the tourism employees should help in the information drive to tourists upon arrival, such as giving leaflets and posting more visible signs in the areas of concern. They should also start deploying more rangers to oversee the areas of concern. And lastly, all tourism employees should mandatorily and strictly implement all tourism and environmental laws of Iceland. Next, we have the Icelandic local community. The Icelandic local community should help spread awareness by reposting the informative videos about the protected areas of Iceland, including the penalties, sanctions to violators. They should also strictly observe and comply with all tourism and environmental laws of Iceland. Number 6 is tourists. Tourists should strictly observe and comply with all tourism and environmental laws of Iceland. They should also help spread awareness by reposting the informative videos about the protected areas of Iceland, including penalties and sanctions to violators. And lastly is the Icelandic academic community. It is suggested that the Icelandic academic community should help spread awareness to students about the protected areas of Iceland, including its penalties and sanctions to violators. And now, to give us the conclusions for this research, we have Karen to do the honors. Karen?
Thank you, Dale. In conclusion, some of our observations from the research we conducted. Mass tourism not only threatens the glacier itself, but also impacts the fragile ecosystems and wildlife that depend on these exceptional settings. The variations in ethical attitudes highlights the need to create environmental regulations and undertake comprehensive protective measures. Sustainable development is important to ensure that the destination thrives, not only environmentally, but economically, socially, and culturally as well. Stewardship, however, is fraught with ethical decision-making due to the complexity of the number of tourism entities that are affected by decisions in tourism, such as the tourists, the DMO, the local government, and the residents as well. It's a very difficult balancing act. The triple bottom line, the people, planet, and profit, is hard as well due to the two extremes. Sometimes making unethical decisions to make a profit can cause the planet harm, or making ethical decisions which may reduce profit but help sustain the planet. Lack of ethics in tourists created a vast damage which led to the degradation of the protected areas of Iceland. Various stakeholders, both private and government, have big roles to play in making ethical decisions in order to protect and preserve the beauty of Iceland. Last but not the least, Kohlberg's theory helped us identify Iceland's tourism stakeholders' level of moral reasoning. When it comes to local tourism businesses, they are usually in stage 1, since they are trying to survive and have many pressures that they have to deal with, while the governing bodies usually tend to be in stage 4. We did not think that any of the organizations are in stage 5 or 6 due to the level of moral reasoning required to be in that stage. Many tourism organizations put themselves ahead of others in what they want to achieve in order to survive. I will now hand it over to Alfredo to talk about the crossword challenge.
As announced earlier, to see if you were paying attention to the presentation, we create a crossword puzzle for you. Please add your answer in the comment section when you review our presentation.
And so that concludes our presentation for today, and we do hope we have given justice for your time. Once again, in behalf of Team D with my co-members Alfredo and Karen, this has been Dale Daniel Bodo saying thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day. Faka Fero Plesh.